Hello everyone, it's Richard Lewis here again with another video. Today, going to be talking about the ongoing development of Valorant and the latest patch we've had, 0.50, that seems to have broken a bit more than it fixed. Now, obviously, the game's in closed beta, and I'm sure a lot of people are going, "Oh, Richard, you hate Riot. You're always bashing on Valorant." No, I'm just bringing you the stuff that, first of all, personally interests me, and second of all, I think you probably need to know. That's why I focused a lot on the anti-cheat, and I also do think it's sort of fascinating watching a game be developed. Valorant is trying to find its own identity, and it's making a lot of changes because, as we know, a lot of it, about 70% of its DNA was based on Counter-Strike. Now they're making those fundamental changes to the game to try and sort of distance it so it feels more like its own thing, and that's bringing with it some interesting ideas, and it's also bringing with it some problems. Me being me, I'm going to talk about both, but probably more the problems, because I think that's more important from a PSA perspective. Also, I'll just say at the time of recording this, I've just filed my Esports review over at Deserto. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the game's viability as an esport moving forward, my ideas about things they can change, and so forth. And I think I've been mostly positive in how I've received Valorant. So, if you're one of those people who go, "Oh, Richard's always bashing on it 'cause it's Riot Games," just look at the facts. It doesn't really bear it out. But that being said, let's bash on Riot Games and Valorant a little bit. So patch 0.50 came out. It's the biggest patch so far in the game's development, and it was heavily focused on quite a bit, but mostly the gunplay. And you can see here, all rifles have been updated to make single tap and burst fire more efficient. Now, that's great. I mean, obviously, for the high skill ceiling game, crisp one bullet aim, burst fire, not having to spray so much, obviously rewards better aimers. I still think the recoil in the game leaves a lot to be desired and really needs to be heavily worked on so it has that nice Counter-Strike feel. So both styles are viable depending on the situation. But it says here, the idea here is to support the viability of all rifle shooting styles, tap, burst, and spray, when used in optimal situations. Great. I think the spray is the one that needs fixing rather than the tap and the aim. This is tied to gun recovery time, which we'll touch on more in the notes below. They nerfed Sage a little bit. They changed. It's nowhere near enough. That's something for another time. Other highlights, custom agent abilities have been changed. We also lowered the cap on the amount of credits. The spike now automatically falls if it gets stuck behind an elevated position, so nobody can grief you anymore. And this is the key part down here. Weapon updates. You'll no longer enter the walking accuracy state when transitioning from run to stop. We noticed many players were entering a walking accuracy state during their run to stop transitions. That made it appear as if the shots they fired landed and were done at full speed. Dead zone accuracy, speed threshold is now increased, 25% to 30%. Now that you can't gain walk accuracy while transitioning from a run to a stop, we've also slightly increased the size of the dead zone, the full accuracy state, to make it a bit easier to get an accurate shot out quickly. So when I saw this change, I would say this is going to be a very well-received change. It's going to make the game a lot better. It's going to reward people feeling that they're a better aimer, and it's going to enable you to do that by sort of upping the dead zone accuracy. One of the really positive things that came out about Valorant at the start was that the gunplay feels really good. Bullets feel like they registered. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's the 128 tick effect." It isn't. It was just the game was very well designed. It was also new. It did have that nice crispy feel to it when you landed your shots. And I said in my game review, I'd never felt like I'd been cheated. I never felt like, "Oh, that definitely hit the game's bullshit." I never really felt that. I always felt, well, I could have done better there. I could have positioned myself better there. My crosshair was slightly off. I was always very philosophical when I missed. That changed radically after 0.50. So first of all, it completely fucked up people's FPS. This was the first thing that sort of came out. And again, this is Deserto. Apologies for any ads that are moving in the background that are distracting. But you can see Riot Games devs provide update on Valorant FPS issues. This was on the 15th of May when the patch dropped. People said performance had dropped, that they were losing FPS. And this was making the game feel not as good. People were complaining about hit reg issues as a result of this and attributing it to FPS drops and performance drops. And Riot Arkham, who is the guy we've talked about quite a bit in previous videos, the head of the anti-cheat development team, he came out and said, for most players, the limiting factor on your frame rate will be single-threaded CPU performance. Unfortunately, most of the settings in the game impacted GPU utilization, so don't end up making a lot of differences to game performance. We're working on it, though. Next patch, we'll see some improvements, and the next couple of patches will make it better again. The game will probably remain CPU bound for the foreseeable future, but we do want to remove frame drops and improve the frame rate for high-end gaming PCs. Now, if you know anything about sort of the history of League of Legends and its development, and indeed some of the philosophy from Counter-Strike itself, one of the things that both developers, Valve and Riot, have looked to do is develop the game with low-end PCs in mind. They want to squeeze as much juice out of the people running the shitty rigs as possible, rather than the people that have the high-end gaming PCs with multi-core rendering and unbelievable, power. They're not so interested in that because they understand the average gamer doesn't have those things. They understand it's played all over the world. There are multiple countries where people don't have access to that technology, or indeed the economic infrastructure required to purchase said technology. So they look to optimize for lower-end PCs, and a lot of updates are based around that. In fact, you'll often see, and this is bizarre, but I've seen this in a few patches in Counter-Strike, people with lower-end PCs saying, oh my god, I gained 10 FPS in the last update. Meanwhile, people with high-end PCs saying, I lost 100 FPS in the last update. And I'm not a tech mind, so I've never really understood how that's possible, but it's something that I've often seen complained about. So Riot Games have said, don't worry, we're on it. But ultimately, reading between the lines there, you can see we're still developing with lower-end machines in mind for optimal performance. And I got to say, Valorant, I never experienced any performance issues. I think its graphical style, the way it's, designed, does feel like I could probably have a much worse PC than the one I do, and it would still be fine. So that was the first thing. Then people started complaining, hang on a minute. This isn't just an FPS issue. We go to our favorite place on God's green earth, Reddit, of course, where all the great minds congregate. And you can see hit registration is so inconsistent since 0.50. Even with low ping, I've seen him multiple hit markers, but end up with far less registered hits. It's visible when spectating other players as well. I don't think it has anything to do with the new run to walk changes, as I feel it happening when standing still as well. And this thread, you can go check it out yourself, overwhelming. People were agreeing, oh yeah, that's happening to me too. Oh my god, it's fucking crazy. And now, look, FPS players, we live inside our own heads fucking rent-free all the time. We're always complaining about something. We're always convinced we hit when we missed. We're always convinced the latest patch broke something. We're always convinced we should have got the kill. It's the nature of the beast. You play FPS for a long period of time, that's where you get to psychologically. It's not always a bad thing. A little bit of ego can be pretty good. But this was overwhelmingly in agreement. And just to show you, at the same time, what started happening was it was showing up on people's streams. High-level players were complaining about it. Here's some examples that I was able to find just on the subreddit.
30 seconds left.
How is he not red? What the fuck? Is that not reg? I hear like 5 hits on my screen. But I hit him twice apparently there.
Charges?
What? You hit him twice?
What? Do you see that?
Roger. You won't expect you, bro.
Goalies! 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 Oh, goalie!
It's there. Dude, there's no way that's a foot shot!
So you can see this wasn't just a moving and accuracy problem. This was something else, something a bit weirder. So being Riot, despite all the sort of evidence and people complaining about it, and this was by no means the only front page Reddit thread about this particular issue, their first comment was to kind of like, old habits die hard, I suppose, was to go into denial. They were like, well, look, I work on the team that's responsible for hit reg. Riot Sobi, and spent a ton of time digging into this stuff, this patch. I care a lot about hit reg. That shit's important. We can't confirm my theory is 100% correct yet, but there's two things I believe are happening here. One, trace is fired while inaccurate from movement and not synced to the server like they are when you're standing still, or from firing error. Those two are synced, so the traces you see on the screen are what's happening on the server. This means that when you have movement inaccuracy, you may see traces pass through an enemy and not deal damage. The chances we put in increase the time it takes to become accurate from running, and we increased movement inaccuracy while walking, which means it's likely people are movement inaccurate more often. I know I am. Relearning the muscle memory timings for stop and shoot is hard because, yes, as we established with the patch notes, they've changed. 2, the spark hit impacts aren't helping for players that are used to the blood hit impacts. They're brighter, obscure the target more, and don't differentiate as well from head and body shots as blood does currently. They're also the same color as the tracers, and it can be hard to see where the tracer is going through the spark impact. We'll be keeping a close eye on this. There may still be a hit reg problem hiding in there somewhere. Thanks for all the reports and videos. Those help us narrow down the root cause and help direct testing efforts. Appreciate y'all. And then he goes into the Valve meme. Shots 1 to 5 clearly missed. Now, of course, this was garbage because it turned out, yes, your patch had broke the fucking hit reg and the game. And it took a few days. It took a while for Riot to kind of wake up and go, oh, yeah, we really fucked up the hit reg with this patch. There was a comment again on Reddit from Riot Stealthy Jesus responding to another complaint. Patch V 0.5 hit reg is just unplayable, was what it said. And Riot Stealthy Jesus replied saying, thank you for the post. There have been several on a similar topic. We adjusted dead zone accuracy with the 0.50 patch. Here are the details. The links to the patch notes I showed you. Those dead zone changes expose some movement accuracy desync between client and server. Your shots process correctly on the server, but the feedback you get on your local client can be at times incorrect. So to put that in layman's terms, what you're fucking seeing ain't what's fucking happening, which is pretty bad in a competitive FPS game. About as bad as it gets. This issue has been in the game code for a long time, but it's previously quite subtle. It took the 0.50 dead zone changes to make it super obvious. We are working on a fix. Depending how quick we are to fix it, the improvements will be in the next patch or the one following. Thank you, David. So that's kind of a little bit worrying that it was always an issue and it's just the most recent patch that's kind of exposed it. I guess that's a testament to how smooth and fluid the game appears, but the reality is, it's a little bit concerning that you've said, oh, it's always been in, it just looks worse now. But they are aware of it, and they are going to make changes, and have said that they are going to patch it. This was backed up by what they added as well, sort of most recently. Riot confirms fix for the Valorant hit reg after perfect storm of issues. So this was what came out on the official Twitter, which I recommend you follow if you want regular updates. It can't just all be about my channel, and I don't recommend Reddit to anyone. It's not pleasant. Definitely follow them on Twitter. Not that Twitter's much better, but, it'll do the job. Big thanks for the reports videos you shared around hit registration feeling off. We found and are fixing a number of issues that compounded this, with the biggest being an actual hit registration bug that impacts low FPS players harder. It's a desync related to in-game FPS. Mix this with movement inaccuracy changes and it being hard to tell between body headshots with sparks and blood being accidentally being disabled. We hit a perfect storm of issues, chasing down all of these things now. So as you can see, it wasn't even just one problem. It was a variety of things. They tried to do too much too quick and basically broke the hitboxes in the game. And funnily enough, it negatively impacted on the lower FPS players, the one that it's sort of being catered to in terms of overall graphical design, CPU and GPU improvements. It affected those guys the worst. So lots of complaints about this. Now, they've said We're going to update it. It's been about a week at the time of recording this. We have no idea whether or not this is viable to fix, whether they'll have to do a rollback, whether they'll be able to improve it. And they have said as well that they're looking to do this over a number of patches. So it's not an easy fix. It's not an easy problem. But that is the wonderful world of FPS games development. And I'm super happy Riot are learning about it contextually as we go along. It's a very different beast to a MOBA, put it that way. And these are problems. It's taking me back. It's taking me back to the glory days of Counter-Strike, playing Counter-Strike as a kid, as well as a young man, I suppose. And seeing all of these problems kind of come up again in Valorant. It's giving me a little bit of deja vu. I'm sure Riot are going to work through. For now, though, 0.50, not a reflection of the Valorant experience. You're probably not going to have too good a time if you are playing it right now. Maybe it's better that you don't, or you might get frustrated, or you might get muscle memory. You might start learning things you don't need to remember long term, because they are going to fix this. Anyway, there you go. That's what went down. Valorant has indeed been broken in the most recent patch. They are going to fix it. But if you're wondering why it feels off and you haven't followed any of the news or you haven't been to Reddit, that's why. All I can say, as always, is thanks very much for watching the video. It's been great to sort of have so many new people coming to the YouTube channel lately. I really appreciate it. Make sure you throw me a like and subscribe. Stick a comment in the bottom about this. Tell me your experiences on the Valorant servers. And I will see you next time. Until then, take care.